All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm joined today by our City Council President, Sean Elo-Rivera, as well as our San Diego Police Chief, David Nisleit. You can also see that we're joined by Pastor Jesus Sandoval, the Executive Director of the City of San Diego's Commission on Gang Prevention and Intervention, Samantha Jenkins, the Chair of the City's Citizens Advisory Board on Police and Community Relations, and Pastor Archie Robinson, member of the City's Commission on Gang Prevention and Intervention. We're here today to provide an update to the public. Since the beginning of this year, there has been a significant increase in violent crime in our city. In just the first 2 months of this year, we have had 10 homicides. This represents an 80% increase over the same time frame just last year. We've had a great number of attempted homicides as well, including 44 non-fatal shootings and a considerable number of assaults. Most recently, we have seen a concentration of deadly shootings take place in the Mount Hope and Mountain View neighborhoods of our city. With this increase in violent crime, my office, the City Council President, as well as San Diego Police Department have heard from community members in the Mount Hope and Mountain View communities, as well as other parts of our city, expressing their concern. And so I'd like to start this afternoon by speaking directly to the residents of Mount Hope and Mountain View who have contacted us asking for increased public safety measures. And the message is this: we hear you and we are taking action. Working with Chief Nisleit, I've directed additional police resources to be present in these communities in order to respond to calls and keep our residents safe. We are also installing public safety deterrents in specific areas that we know are connected to this increase in violent crime. Further, I have directed our city's transportation department to prioritize streetlight repair in these communities in an effort to increase lighting, visibility, and safety. The city has received reports of and identified at least 25 streetlight outages in Mount Hope and Mountain View. I can report that work began yesterday on repairing these lights. Appreciation to our city crews who got on this swiftly. I believe they'll have that work wrapped up by next week. We are also deploying a strike team to clean up graffiti and to ensure that the neighborhood reflects the vast majority of the residents of this neighborhood who want to live their lives in peace. In addition, along with the Council President's office, we'll be working with community leaders to convene conversations with the community on how the city can best work together with them, our partners in the neighborhood, to curb further violence. Bringing our offices to the community to hear from them about what they need and what they are experiencing is an important part of crime prevention. We expect to have those meetings scheduled in the coming days. Now, while most recently these incidents we're talking about are in Mount Hope and in Mountain View, we have seen a marked increase in violent crime across the city. It's not exclusive to just these two neighborhoods. Crime is up citywide, crime is up nationwide, and this has been true for much of the pandemic. So we will not let this go unaddressed, and we will hold those who choose to perpetrate crime in our community accountable. There will be consequences for criminal behavior in our city. So maintaining public safety is a priority for our city. It has been throughout my career in elected office, and it will continue to be as long as I'm the mayor of this city, period. The San Diego Police Department and I are working together to keep a watchful eye on crime trends throughout our city, and we will respond directly with public safety resources accordingly. As your mayor, I will not stand by and let our communities be degraded by violence and have our residents living in fear. I'm committed to making sure that our city remains one of the safest big cities in the United States. With that, I'm happy to turn the podium over to City Council President Sean Elo-Rivera. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Every person in every community has a right to feel safe. Sadly, we're in a moment where far too few people are feeling that safety that they deserve. The tension, trauma, and devastation of the past 2 years has led to an increase in crime and gun violence across the country and across our city. We're not okay, and it breaks my heart. We've experienced a lot over the past couple years, and many of us have had tough times, bad days. All of that mixed in with way too many guns on the street leave us where we are. And as is often the case, neighborhoods that have been historically treated the most cruelly are feeling especially vulnerable during this time, including some of the neighborhoods that I represent. In these moments, connecting with community and centering supportive services and taking meaningful action is crucial so we feel safe, valued, protected, and served. I appreciate the mayor taking immediate steps to improve public safety in my district. Thank you. That means a lot. Cleaning graffiti, trimming trees, fixing streetlights, these are all things we can do to make our neighborhoods feel safer now, to show communities that we care, and make the city's presence felt in the community. Some may scoff at these actions as ways to address an issue such as violence, but I've heard directly from my constituents, the most impacted neighborhoods, that this will in fact make them feel safer. We have to hear them, and we have to act. We will have some healing to do, which will take time. The increase in violence we've all felt across the city and the nation will not just go away. We also need longer-term solutions. That must include investing in our youth, creating opportunities and building programs that are proven to reduce gun violence. I'll just take a moment to note here that much of the violence that has occurred has been most felt by young people, young men in particular. That is especially heartbreaking to me as a former coach and as someone who's spent my career working with young people. Each of those incidents of violence ruin lives, not just of the lives of those taken, but those who were on the other end committing the violence. And that is a tragedy in every single way we can think of it. Those longer-term solutions, which again are proven through data, have been outlined in the budget priorities for my district. I also want to recognize Chief Nisleit and the San Diego Police Department and the essential role that you have to play. While some, including some folks I've worked with in the past, may not see police as part of the solution here, I know, again, recognizing the humanity of my constituents, that what they are asking for is to see police in their neighborhood. And we need to hear them as well. We appreciate the work that you do, you and your department. You are dealing with a very, very difficult job on a daily basis that is harmful and it's sometimes violent in terms of how you are treated. And I respect the work that you do. I especially want to lift up the work, the incredible work being done by our trusted community leaders. Some here with us today and others who are out there right now on the front lines doing very, very important work to not only stop violence, but to aim for something even higher, which is a level of peace. One of those leaders actually works in this building, Council President Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. I want to make sure I recognize her work and the work of the peace movement, which I know, having spoken to her earlier today, she is still hard at work at. And that work is going to be essential to achieving the long-term goals that so many of us share, which is, again, not just not having violence, but achieving peace. I want to thank the community leaders who are on the ground. Community care is critical to ensuring we create a sense of safety that is just and accessible to all. We all must work together to bring peace and safety to our neighborhoods. And with that, I will welcome the Chief. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Council President, and good afternoon. As your Chief of Police, I lead your San Diego Police Department's efforts to keep our city safe. And unfortunately, we've been very busy. We've seen an increase in crime that began more than a year ago. That trend has carried through for the first 2 months of this year. So therefore, I've directed resources to stop the violence. Our homicide unit, gang unit, and area detectives have been working hard to solve these cases. Uniformed officers from patrol, special operations, and crime suppression teams have been working hard making arrests and preventing further violence. Officers have been participating in community walks and collaborating with our neighborhood partners. So far, we've seen 10 homicides this year, and our homicide unit has already arrested suspects in 8 of those 10 cases. As the mayor has mentioned, our communities have suffered 44 non-fatal shootings so far this year. And in addition to the number of arrests, San Diego PD is working hard to prevent more shootings. Officers so far have recovered 372 guns from the streets, including 77 ghost guns. In addressing this ongoing violence, officers and detectives have arrested and taken guns from gang members, probationers, persons on parole, persons selling drugs, and others who wish to harm to our communities. 372 firearms may sound like a number to you, but each of those guns pulled off the streets represents a robbery, a shooting, or a murder that was prevented by our police department. Every San Diegan deserves to feel safe walking in their neighborhoods without fear that they'll be attacked or caught in crossfire. This is not a privilege. Public safety is a right that every member of this community is entitled to. This requires community engagement and outreach, and it also requires accountability for those who choose to victimize and traumatize our community through crime and violence. So I really want to thank my partners, the mayor, council president, Pastor Sandoval, as I know him, A-Rob, and Samantha. Thank you so much for being partners. The key I want to say here, folks, if you see something, please say something. We are still searching for the shooter who took the life of our 12-year-old Angel Gaspar, and his family deserves that closure. That crime happened on Thanksgiving afternoon, or evening, I should say. We are still working hard to get guns out of the hands of criminals who carry these weapons with bad intentions. I want to say your police department is making progress, but we could even do more with the community's help. Again, our community deserves to be free of senseless violence, and I'm asking everybody to work together to achieve that goal. Thank you. And with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Chief, if you could just explain to the public, they're asking why is crime spiking so much by 80%? What would you tell them?
We've seen this trend, and it's not just a local trend. It is a national trend. I talked to chiefs from all over the nation, and we are seeing a trend. I was on a call early January that talks about the threat picture for 22, and unfortunately, it's not good news. It seems to be that the violence would continue. And I think, everybody asks, what's the gold nugget? Why? I don't know if anybody has that answer. I think it's a little bit of everything. I think it's a lack of accountability. I think it's the pandemic. People are frustrated. People have been out of work. Kids were out of school for a while. I know this is all starting to open up again, but unfortunately, we're still seeing these trends. Again, this time last year, not as many homicides. We've already seen 10. Now, granted, we've solved 8 of those cases, but that's 10 families, 10 victims that have just, senseless violence that we have to stop. So I don't think anybody has the answer of why, but I think the answer moving forward is how we stop it, is working all together. It's not just the police department. It's not just the mayor's office. It's all of us. It's all of us working together to understand that public safety is a priority for everybody, and everybody, I don't care if you live down by the border all the way up to Wild Animal Park, you have a right to feel safe as you walk the street, or you walk your kids to school, or you walk to the corner market. And so that's what we're all working together. That's what the police department is out there. But unfortunately, in my 34 years now, I've never seen the proliferation of the number of guns in our streets and the number of persons that have guns on them right now. We haven't seen it. And we saw record numbers last year, and the number of guns recovered, I think it was 545 ghost guns alone recovered. And we're well on that number again this year, unfortunately. And generally, unfortunately, January and February seem to be quite generally normal years. So it's alarming, but that's why we're here, is to make sure it stops.
Chief, I'm curious. We know that the Ghost Gun team has gained nationwide recognition. So many people looking at that as a model potentially for other cities. But I'm curious, as we've seen their work over the last 6 months, have you seen them being proactive and being able to stop? Obviously, they're solving those crimes involving the ghost guns, but do you feel it's making a dent on preventing future crimes happening? Are you seeing any work there?
I do. I think the work that our Ghost Gun team is doing, along with, there was a case that the U.S. Attorney featured, I think, just 2 weeks ago, just really shows the collaboration that San Diego Police Department, U.S. Attorney's Office, ATF is doing to try to take guns out of those that are prohibited from having them. And this ghost gun problem is a real problem. It's a problem nationwide. So I do think the work that they're doing has been phenomenal. We don't talk about every single case that they solve, and the number of guns that they've recovered it's amazing. I wish I could brag about every time that they work a case, but we're still working cases following up through that. So, yeah, and it has been received. I've just had Sacramento in here trying to copy what we're doing. So, yeah.
A year ago, you talked about the launch of the No Shots Fired program, and I'm wondering if there's an update. I would think that would be part of this kind of initiative moving forward. Has it had any sort of effect on anything?
Of course it is. It's I see a lot of promise in this program. Anytime that we can try to get, generally it's going to be a young man, to remove them from that gang lifestyle, remove them from, and again, we generally are looking at young men that are what I would call gang or gun involved. They have a case because they've been caught with a gun or, something to do with violence. If we can steer just a couple of these kids out of that, those are lives saved on both directions, theirs and possibly somebody else that they might victimize. So again, you have to look at, our eyes are wide open, if you will, everything that we can do to try to drive down violence, to try to change people's lives. So if it's the no shots fired, if it's CAST, a couple of the folks behind me are very involved in the CAST program, intervention and prevention on gangs. It's all of us working hand in hand to try to drive down these numbers.
In the uptick of these crimes this year, are any of them, or most of them, or a big chunk of them being attributed to gang violence?
A lot of them are, yes. We saw a significant increase last year in gang homicides than we had the previous year. From 20 to 2021, I believe we had 17 gang homicides last year. I think that was up from 10 roughly. Don't quote me on that exact number. Yes, we are seeing the gang violence kind of driving a lot of this violence right now. But it's not just gang violence, it's family violence. And it's not just Mountain Hope, Mountain View, it's everywhere. We've had them in Sabre Springs, we've had them in Old Town, we've had these homicides. And it's just, again, these are just senseless acts of violence that we must stop.
Chief, not too long ago, a few days ago, there was a saying that there was not enough police officers to go around everywhere and try to respond and prevent crime. They see something and say something. Do you think it is working out with the trust of the community in order to accomplish? You cannot do it alone.
Correct.
Angel is an example.
Yes.
Thanksgiving and nothing too far. We're pretty sure that somebody knows, but they're not saying anything. So they see something, say something, goes to the part of solving crimes, actually, in that way, and then for the community to see if the trust in the police is at the part of that something, say something, in order to really fight together in the crime.
Yeah, I think I understand your question. I think the trust is there. We are getting a ton of calls, and the last 2 years we've seen an 18% increase in calls to the San Diego Police Department. So to me, that speaks volumes about trust. The reason why I always mention On Hill's case is because that family and that victim deserves closure on that case. And so it's my means of keeping that case in public eye because, to your point, somebody knows something. And we just need that tip. Once we get that tip, it is a starting point, if you will, for us to start solving that case. We're very much in connection with that family. And we all want to bring closure to On Hill and his family, who just literally turned 13 just a couple weeks ago. So.
I have a question. I think some people might hear what's being said today, and for them, they won't be hearing anything groundbreaking. In fact, they will be hearing things that the city has done for a long time, like community walks and saturation patrols after violence. So, could you talk a little bit about, could you speak to the people who feel like more needs to be done beyond that, and maybe what more the city can do or plans to do beyond what you outlined today?
With regard to violence prevention?
Yeah.
Well, first off, we have experienced situations like this in the past, and so yes, we can deploy the tools that we know are effective. That is, policing in order to hold folks accountable, as mentioned, addressing the built environment and crime suppression through public design, street lights, etc. What you saw last summer, I think, was in anticipation of some of this concerns, where we invested heavily in summer recreational programming, having the kinds of offerings for children and young people. We are working soon to unveil a summer youth employment program that will likely employ over 1,000 young people in our city as a means, again, of occupation, diversion, things of that nature. So the benefit that we have been able to see from state and federal investment in our community, and driving them both through a lens of equity, making sure we're investing in underinvested communities, and really targeting populations that we think have some of these concerns. You've heard a profile here of young men who need to be occupied. Those are things that we haven't done as a city before, and that we're going to be doing going forward, whether it was the summer program last year, which I believe may, with council's support, be replicated in the summer ahead, to the youth employment effort. More to be done. These are unusual times, though, and I think maybe what you're craving or looking for is what is different. Well, you know, you've seen our city council step up and pass groundbreaking legislation when it comes to ghost guns that is now being replicated in other communities. We're continuing to endeavor on ways to be creative in addressing these underlying concerns, both the root causes that the council president was talking about, as well as the urgent and immediate concerns that the chief and I have discussed. If I can go back, Carlos, just to your point, I want to point you talk about the efforts and the things that we ask of our police officers. Draw your attention to yesterday, the apprehension of 2 individuals who detonated a pipe bomb at a hotel in Kearny Mesa. Because of excellent police work in partnership with regional law enforcement, those 2 folks are in custody today. It shows you what our department can do, and Chief, thank you to yourself and the women and men of our police department, as well as our partners in regional law enforcement. We can find bad people, we can hold them accountable, and what we need is the public's help in making sure that we can identify individuals and bring them to justice. What I'm saying, and I want you to hear me very clearly, there will be consequences for bad actions in this city, whether that's in Mount Hope, Sabre Springs, Kearny Mesa. We'll hold people accountable, and then that is not news. I understand that, but that's the right thing to do.
Maybe one more for the chief. We spoke with the father of a victim who was killed, and he mentioned that something very important in all police in the whole city, the whole county, is that crime changes, evolves. Ghost guns, we didn't know about this 5 years ago. So the police also need to have continued training about culture, understanding.
Yeah.
We have a culture in the different areas of the city and the whole county. The continuing training is evolving with this type of situation and crime. What the police force?
Yeah, he not detecting that.
Of course. I mean, police department has required training from POST, which is the accreditation for the state. But also there's a lot of training that we put on ourselves. For instance, to your point, we just started a program just a couple Mondays ago. We had to kind of delay it a little bit for COVID, where it talks about culture, it talks about bias, it talks about different things, talks about emerging crime trends. So our officers are in a constant state of training. I truly believe in training. I truly believe in lifelong learning. And so, you know, we pay attention to the trends. We pay attention to what is going on across the nation. That's why we created the Ghost Gun Team, as we saw this as an emerging problem. And so we're trying to get out in front of it.
Culture training.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
And let me, if I can just add on to that, because I think I understand what you're asking. Everything the chief said is accurate. I want to point out that last year, under the leadership of Council President Pro Tem Monica Montgomery Stepp, we stood up the first Office of Race and Equity at the city. So the equity and racial diversity training is now being done not just in the police department, but across the city. This is important work that has been started this fiscal year. Will continue going forward. That is maybe perhaps something that's a bit different from the city. But it gets to your point about the need to serve a city as diverse as ours. Police department has had a record of this. We're going to do more, but it's not just going to be the police department. It's going to be every department that interfaces with the public. Yeah.
Mayor Gloria, can you speak to how important it is? We've heard a lot today, that demographic of young men in the community that maybe are right now, like you said, and mentioned the programs, that need productive ways to spend their time. How important is it to connect with that demographic and to allow those who are activists in the community to step in and say these are measurable ways that we can make a difference?
Actually, I think the council president, in many ways, is better suited. This is what he did before he became our council president. Do you mind, Tim? Then I'll wrap up. Okay.
Just to step back for a second, over the last couple of years, our social fabric has been shredded. Programs and activities that young people were able to count on and take for granted have just been gone. And there's a cost to that. There's a cost in terms of just the time that is not spent doing good, fun things. There's an emotional cost to that as well. So again, this isn't just a problem amongst young men. I don't know that any of us are okay right now. But specifically that group at that period of development, they need love, they need attention, they need support. And it's largely been gone. And it was pulled out from them rapidly, overnight. I'm getting emotional because I'm thinking about the young people that I worked with a couple of years ago and watching the rug just pulled out from under them, right? And so we have to embrace them, right? So whether it's the work done by CAST and getting out there, or if it's simply investing in jobs and after school activities, we need our young folks to feel loved, because hurt people, And love people love people. And that might seem overly simplistic. It may seem like a soft way to address such a serious issue, but I think long term and holistically, that's actually how we make progress.
Just conclude with appreciation. What you see today is the council president, the chief of police, the mayor, all standing here, a unified city, saying that we will not tolerate crime in this community, that we'll resource our law enforcement professionals to make sure they're protecting our neighborhoods, and calling upon the community to be partners in this effort, because we all have a responsibility when it comes to public safety. I thank Pastor Sandoval, Ms. Jenkins, Pastor Robinson for being here and for what they do all around. They represent the kind of community involvement that we want to see across our city. We all have a collective responsibility for keeping San Diego one of the safest big cities in the United States. That is a title that we have today. It is a title we will have tomorrow, but we're more likely to have that title if we're all working together. You see us completely united in this matter. Again, for those who have information for some of the crimes that we're talking about today, we ask you to come forward, provide that information to the police department. Let's find the bad guys. Let's hold them accountable. In the meantime, let's continue doing some of this work of investing in our communities, whether it's the easy stuff today like fixing streetlights or the more important stuff like investing in young people. I believe that we can achieve that objective of being continuing to be the safest big city in the United States. Thank you all for being here today and help us get this important message out. I appreciate that, and we always are here to answer more questions in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you, guys.